Hi. I'm the last one. Try to have you guys out of here. I'm Tamitha Crowson. I made some notes. I might need to look at them. I'm Tamitha Crowson, and I am currently the fitness director for 180 Fitness, and I run a program called Boot Camp Challenge here in Cape Girardeau. I consider my life's mission to awaken the brave and courageous parts of people and encourage them to do the scary thing. And I happen to do that from the platform of fitness. I'm here tonight to do that very thing, only this time my platform is my own life. And I hope that you'll leave here with the knowledge that we're both the same and the belief that you're capable of more than you ever imagined. Most of you know me, if you know me, as a personal trainer, fitness instructor. My son's friends know me as the buff mom. I hear through the grapevine that some people think I'm intimidating, although I'm not sure why. But if you could see inside, you would see the beginnings of me, which was a very shy and awkward child. And I didn't really have any friends. When I was 9, my mom divorced my dad, or they divorced. It was a very amicable thing, but I had a sister who was younger than me, and when my mom remarried, I gained a stepsister that was older and another stepbrother that was younger. So I went from the oldest child and the boss to the middle child and lost. And so that was a very hard time for me, and I think it kind of reverberated for years in my life as I struggled to find my place in my family and in life in general. I can remember the second day of 7th grade, I was really tired of not having any friends. And I literally didn't have any friends. I was just so shy and always, felt like I didn't measure up. And I got tired of feeling that way. And so I told myself, okay, no matter what it takes, I am going to fit in. And so the second day of 7th grade, I walked up to kind of a circle of kids that were standing there talking, and I basically just forced my way into this conversation. And from that moment on, I became a extrovert, an extroverted introvert, I guess you would say. And what happened was I started doing a lot of things that I thought the cool kids were doing, but they weren't actually doing. I imagined them to be these big partiers and, sex and boys and all this kind of stuff. So I started to engage in some of those behaviors, not realizing that it was a bunch of talk or, my imagination. So that kind of took me down a road that was kind of dark at times. And, I was having, boyfriends that were way older than me, and some were kind of pretty crazy. I ended up running away my junior year of high school. I was gone the whole first semester of my junior year with one of my crazy boyfriends. And I got back and decided that I was going to, my grades had dropped, and so I wanted to go to college. So I buckled down and ended up getting a 4.0 my senior year. So that was great, but then I went to college. And college was a lot of fun. And it was a little too fun. And I went a year, and then in Springfield, and I transferred to Mizzou, because that's where my boyfriend at the time was going. And Mizzou really got the best of me. And my grades were okay, but my social life was out of control. And I was doing a lot of drinking, a lot of partying, and ended up having to drop out of school and live back home for a little while. And about that time, the guy I was dating said he had gotten a graduate assistantship at Mississippi State. And so he said, why don't you just come with me? I said, okay, that would be a really good idea. So I did. And while I was there, I lived there for a couple months and joined a gym. And, as a kid, I was not at all athletic at all. Joined a gym and decided that I was going to start working out. And so I did, and I fell in love with it. In the process, I also picked up an eating disorder because sometimes when you diet, it can actually change your brain chemistry. And so I believe that's what happened. I went on a pretty strict diet and started losing weight. And before you know it, I was doing this weird thing where I would eat broccoli with ketchup on it and count my calories. And then I would go to the gym like 3 times a day to try to burn off all the calories that I had assumed that I had eaten that day. And it got to be a real problem. And I was finding myself I was cranky. I had no drive to do anything. I just felt awful. My mind was completely occupied all the time with this obsession of how my thighs looked or how my stomach looked, and it was not a fun place to live. And I can remember people coming up to me and they'd say, I wish I was as dedicated as you are. And I would think, no, you really don't. This is not fun. So somehow, it took a long time, but over the years, I was able to, and this was, a lot of stuff was going on in this time span, but I'll just stick with this one little thing and then I'll kind of go back. But I eventually was able to learn that it didn't really matter what I looked like. And this is something that I repeated to myself, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many times. I would say it out loud. I can remember saying it to myself driving down the road. Tamitha, no one is going to love you any more or any less because of 10 pounds in either direction. And I said that to myself over and over so many times that I actually started to believe it. And that's one thing that I tell a lot of my clients now that I find maybe have a little bit of, too much of a mental obsession with the scale or their weight. So that was tough, but it wasn't as tough as some of the other things that I would experience. So I ended up living in Mississippi for about 10 years, met and married my first husband there, divorced him, met and married my second husband there, and we ended up, who was an addict, by the way, we ended up moving back to Missouri, at which time we conceived our first child that I miscarried. And it was very early. It was like 12 weeks into the pregnancy, so I didn't really have much of an emotional attachment. But I remember it being a pretty tough time. So after that, it wasn't long, and I started trying for another one. He was just kind of half on board, but luckily I didn't need him all that much for it. So I ended up getting pregnant with our first son, Blake, and that was in December. He was born in December of 2001. About 2 weeks later, his dad, my husband, went to jail. And I think at that time he ended up going to prison. And so not long after that, I think Blake was about 6 weeks old, I found out I was already pregnant again with our second son, Evan. And so I moved back home, and I was there with a newborn and a 10-month-old. And that was a pretty hard year, as you can imagine. So I ended up divorcing that one and met my third husband, who was a very successful businessman, and he's also a very functional and angry alcoholic. So we moved to Joplin, and I was, of course, brought my two boys. At that time, they were like 3 and 4. And we, had, from the outside, quite a nice life. But from the inside, it was not a nice life. I was really wilting inside, and I can remember, he was very controlling and abusive, not in a physical way, but in very much of a emotional way. And eventually, the drinking got so bad, and I got tired of it, and I could see that it was not going to end well for me, that I was starting to, engage in some behaviors that were definitely not healthy. And so I took the boys and we left, and we went into a shelter and stayed there for a few months, couple months, I guess. And I ended up going back home again. So during this time, I had decided to divorce my third husband. I really like weddings, by the way. I just don't like marriage that much, evidently. So we got divorced, and I met somebody else. And this guy I was very much in love with. But I didn't really open up to him about who I was and what I'd been through and the things I'd struggled with. And he was very wealthy and very successful and good guy. But I hid a lot from him because I wanted to appear as a certain kind of person, and I wasn't that certain kind of person, and it backfired. It was really my first, to say it out loud, it sounds kind of, she broke. It was hard. It was really my, even after all those divorces, it was my first true heartbreak. And I had never, and I think probably because of this reason, that I had never let myself experience grief before. I had always had somebody else in the wings, or I had some kind of substance to kind of help me through, but I had never just gone in and hurt bad before. And during this time, I had rekindled a relationship with my father, who I've been not estranged, but just, we weren't very close. And he spent hours, hours and hours on the phone with me, helping me to see the truth, which was that the breakup was not because this person wouldn't support me. It was because I did it wrong. I was not honest and I was not truthful. And to own that was one of the hardest things that I ever did. And it was one of the most valuable things that I ever did, because it allowed me to truly move forward. And that's kind of one of the things that I talk a lot about now is owning your mistakes. And I feel like without doing that, you're pretty much dead in the water. So it was during this breakup, and it was before the whole father thing. Well, I guess it was around the same time, but during the end of the breakup, it was on again, off again for 2 years. It was really painful. I ended up deciding that I just was done, and I had caused, the people in my life. I'm skipping a lot here, but I had caused the people in my life a fair amount of pain, and it was just one seemed like one thing after another, and so I attempted to end my life, and I took a whole bunch of blood pressure medication, a lot of it, and one of my kids found me before it was too late, and I went to the hospital and woke up and thought, what the hell? And so I had to come to terms with the fact that, okay, I guess I'm going to do this, and I've got to figure out a way to be less concerned with how I appear and more concerned with who I really am. So around that time, after all that happened, I ended up coming to Cape Girardeau, and I came here without my boys because I didn't really have anything. I had started over about 3 or 4 times, and this was one of those times. And so I came down here, and I had gotten a degree from Mississippi State back when I was there in fitness management. Ended up working in the field for a long time. But by this time, I had kind of let my certification lapse. Well, I didn't I actually did let it lapse. And so I came down here, and I decided to get back into the fitness industry. And so I got my certification again and was working part-time for the first speaker we heard in here, Christine, as a fitness attendant in the fitness room. And started to realize that my connection with people was the most important thing when it came to how good of a life I was going to have. It wasn't really what I could acquire. It was how I related to other people, and the willingness to become vulnerable and that was how I connected. That's how I figured out that if I can show who I really am and be honest with people and let them see who I am, there's really no end to the kind of human connections I can make. And so that's when I kind of started to develop this platform about helping people see their brave and courageous side, because I had to do a lot of scary things. I ended up starting my own fitness online fitness business, T. Krause and Fitness. That went on for a couple years. I ended up starting the local boot camp challenge, and that grew to be, it's the biggest one in the nation of its kind. And so these were all really scary things for me. And so I did all this, and my boys came down, and it was great, and things were going well, and they were flourishing. And Blake, by this time, he came down here. I was 13, 14, something like that. Became a real very proficient snare player in his band and traveling, competing drum corps. So things were looking up. I met somebody who is now I've been with for 6 years, and he is my life partner, and really the healthiest relationship I've ever had, based on trust and honesty. And so I got this call to do this talk back in, I guess it was December or November of last year, and gladly agreed, willingly agreed. Not realizing that I was going to have to still survive the hardest thing in my life, which was the suicide death of Blake in April of this year. And that was threw all of us for a loop. He crashed his car into a light pole over a rocky cliff at 75 miles an hour without braking. and I know this because I have the Life 360 app that, the paid version, which shows you if your kid has slammed on the brakes or if it's accelerated, how many times they've used their phone. There was some other things too that pointed that out, but that, you can take all of the things that I experienced, my own suicide attempt, all my failed relationships, my, struggles with drugs and drinking and, none of that. That's why and homelessness, when I saw the article and I was like, oh, to me, that's just like such a small thing. It was just so back there. And because I just didn't have a place to stay, so I just stayed at this other place for a little while and they helped me. And then I was done. And so, it just dwarfs everything else. So his brother, Evan, who just turned 18 yesterday, lost his best friend and his at the time really only friend, and I lost my firstborn son, and it was something. There's been other mothers in here talk about losing their children, and it's a special kind of pain that really. Sometimes I'm just walking along and it'll hit me that my son is dead, and it's a shock. It's just like it's fresh every time. What it's taught me, I don't know what it's taught me yet. It's only been 6 months. It's taught me that I can survive anything. Really, I truly believe that. And I don't want to go too long, but I will say that one of the most significant, I miss him so bad. I do, and I like to talk about him. But I know you guys didn't know him. So I'll just say that he was a special guy, and he had this tattoo on his hand, and I have it on my hand now, and so does my other son. It says "Breathe." And he hadn't had it very long, but after he died, then my other son, Evan, went to the same tattoo artist to get a matching tattoo. And so he went in and he asked, he wanted the same font and everything. And the tattoo artist said, well, he didn't really, we didn't use a particular font. That he looked through like 12 or 13 or 14 fonts, but couldn't really find anything he wanted. So we just used a basic font. But the reason he couldn't find anything was because he wanted there to be imperfections in the lettering. And she said he was really adamant about this, that I not make it perfect. And so she didn't make it perfect. They just used a basic font, and she went in and she made some very small adjustments to like the E and the N so that it wouldn't be just right. And so when I heard that, I thought that was pretty amazing, because to me, and I'll never know his exact reason for doing this, but to me what it said is that even the things that are normally appear perfect have imperfections. And that if we can embrace those and learn to love them and breathe through them, then it makes us who we are, and that is a unique and special person, just as he was and just as I am. And so I carry that with me, and I don't have any other tats, but I remember when I was about 23, I wanted one. I couldn't think of anything that was important enough to me to get on my body forever. And so it took me 51 years, and I finally thought of something. And so we all have the same tattoo now. So anyway, that's really what I've got. I feel like inside we literally, we truly all struggle with the same insecurities and the same types of feelings. And they may have different faces and take on different forms, but inside we are all the same. And the sooner we can connect on that level, the sooner we can all live a more full and wholehearted life and do that scary thing, because it's really not so scary when you realize that that everybody experiences the same thing. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and have a good night. Thanks.